Hello to everyone. So before we start, I'll just give a brief introduction. I'm Caitlin Needs, the children's pastor at Dayspring. And today I have the privilege of speaking to Jan Harvey, who is an experienced counsellor, former teacher. She heads up our Renew prayer ministry at Dayspring. She's on staff here. As well as all of that, she's also a wonderful wife, mother and grandmother. So today she's going to be sharing from her work experience and her life experience. So it's a real privilege to have you with us today, Jan.
Thanks, Caitlin. It's just lovely to be here with everybody.
Now that we've done it. And just a heads up, so Jan and I, we are diving in the deep end. We are doing the first conversation, which hopefully will be a conversation of many. A few other members from our Dayspring Church will also be able to host things like this and just speak into the reality of life right now. But we are going to be speaking into children, how to speak to them, how to help them through this, and what life looks like for families. So are we ready to jump straight in?
Let's go for it.
Okay. So as everyone is feeling, life has just suddenly changed, like in drastic ways. And even if we wanted to shelter our children, that choice is kind of taken away from us somewhat because their day-to-day life has changed so drastically. So what are some of the things that our kids are actually needing right now in this situation?
Caitlin, I can't emphasise enough that what our children need most right now is us. They need a mum and a dad or a safe person in their life who can bring the stability and the security and the reassurance that they so desperately need, because their lives have been turned upside down, as have ours. So, what they need most is us. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's really encouraging, because I think sometimes you can go on social media or hear all the news and you think, oh, I've got to do this, I've got to do this. But at the end of the day, they just need us present with them. Yeah. But how can we do that in the midst of trying to juggle it all and trying to tick off the boxes? How can we actually be what they need, be present in the moment?
Yeah, it's a huge ask, I know, because there's so much going on, so much demand that everybody's experiencing, and so much that we're needing to deal with within ourselves. So the first thing that we need to do is to be able to find our own place of peace and calm. We need to attend to our own levels of anxiety and what's coming at us so that we can provide that safe place for our children. When we were talking earlier, you were saying, how do we do that? Because every moment that we're awake, there's something happening. And I said to you, well, maybe it's even just in the loo. I'm just being realistic. To find a place where you can just get alone and calm your own anxiety. Find your own stable place. And for many of us, that's in our connection with God. It's as we go to him, because he's not anxious. He's not anxious at all. This did not take him by surprise. He is still very much the same God that we have known. So we connect in with him and with who he is for us. And however we do that, we might do it through worship music. We might do it through Bible verses that have been meaningful to us. We might do it through just being in nature, and that's our still calm place, because we still can get outside, and even if it's just outside the door to a beautiful tree or a flower or whatever, just something that helps us just to calm. Sometimes we just need to breathe, and I don't say that lightly. I say that with a lot of meaning, because focusing on our breathing brings the levels of anxiety in our system down, so that we can, it does literally calm our system. So to focus on our breathing and to get to our own place of calm so that we can provide that for our children.
Yeah, that's true. I notice that sometimes, like in the chaos, if I think, oh, drop your shoulders and just all those physical things, it's like, oh, I was so... But yeah, just that breathing, like Yeah, that physical thing actually helps us connect a bit more to peace. And I kind of think of this season a bit like, you know, before you have children, you can have those big, long times in God's presence, and then all of a sudden you have a baby and you have no time. And it's almost like rediscovering your relationship again. But whether it's hanging out, watching, or whatever, God is faithful and he meets us wherever we can just turn our attention towards him. He meets us and he gives us what we need.
Yes.
I think I was speaking to you before, one thing that we both talked about was a strategy that our very own T. Wiseman shared with our Day Spring women. And that's been really helpful for me. It was kind of like a rating. So you can, on a piece of paper, imagine that you write the number 0 to 10 and imagine what your 10-day would look like, that perfect day. How would you be feeling? How would you be functioning? What would your house look like on a 10-day? Probably spotless and perfect. What would it look like on a 5? How would you be feeling? And then just using that just to check in and go, okay, where am I today? And if, you know, for example, I was a 4, going, okay, I'm living at a 4 right now. I'm feeling a bit stretched, not feeling the pressure to go, oh, I have to like get to 10 and all the things I have to do, looking back from where I am at 4 to 0, going, oh, I'm a 4. I'm not at a 0. There are things working in my life right now. And you spoke about focusing on those things, which was really helpful. Did you want to just speak into that a little bit?
Yeah. It was really wonderful when you reminded me of what T shared with us, because it's giving us permission to be where we are, and knowing that that's okay to be where we are, and to celebrate the things that are working where we are, because there will always be something that's working. Whether we're at a 1 or a 2 even, there's something there that's working. To acknowledge what's working and to celebrate that and to go with that, because that's where our strength is, in what is working, rather than on feeling like I've got to get at least a 5 or I've got to get to an 8. Being accepting where we are and giving ourselves permission to be there. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is around giving ourselves permission, knowing that we're in uncharted territory, and it's not okay to put huge demands on ourselves, but to be giving ourselves permission to be where we are and to recognize what is working for us.
Yeah. This is funny to talk about the times feeling a bit chaotic. Can I just throw out to Pastor Aaron, I am using my daughter's iPad and video keeps pausing because Sam is trying to FaceTime her. So if you're seeing it paused, I'm cancelling the phone call. So Pastor Aaron, Christian, Marty can't use the iPad. It's real life, isn't it? So talking about children, how do we talk to them about what is going on and COVID-19? Like, how do we address that? Because they are seeing things and hearing things. So where do we step in?
Yeah, that's a really important question. And what I'm going to be sharing, if you want more detail on this, I would suggest you go to Hey Sigmund. Karen Young has put some excellent information out. She's got a blog post, but she's also got a video that will give examples of how you can talk to your kids. But what I want to share today is, first of all, obviously we need to make it age appropriate. So we're tempering our language, the amount we share, all of that to the age of the child. And I think the best way is that we let the children lead the conversation. We take the initiative by making space for that conversation, sitting down with them and saying, you know, there's a lot going on right now and a lot of people talking about it. I'm just wondering what you've heard, and open it up for them to tell us what they've been hearing, and then to ask them how they feel about it, how it's impacting them. And I would encourage parents in this conversation not to feel like you've got to jump in and correct things, fix things, but just to listen and get a real gauge on what's happening for your child and how your child's responding. Because just like us, all of our children will respond differently. So we want to step into that conversation, to be intentional about that conversation, but let the children lead it. And as we ask them what they're feeling about it, to be really aware of normalising the feelings, letting them know that to feel a bit anxious, to feel a bit frightened right now is very normal. It would be expected that they would be feeling like that. So that they know that they're not alone in feeling that, and they don't have to keep those feelings hidden. But we can talk about those feelings, and even to let them know, there's times when I feel a bit anxious about it because we haven't experienced this before. But in addition to that, we add in. So we'll add in, but we know that we're going to be okay. We will be okay. And again, that's what children need. They need to be reassured that we are going to be okay. But don't jump in with that reassurance too early. We need them to recognise that we've actually entered into their feeling with them. When they've said, I'm feeling really frightened because I don't know what's going on, and I'm sad because I can't see my friends, to step into that with them. I get what that's like. I understand that. So that you are matching their feelings, and then they feel heard and understood. And from that place of feeling heard and understood, then we can reassure them. It's not going to be like this forever. And just give them those little pieces of information that help them to hold on to hope and to get some perspective on the current situation. It's not going to go on forever. But again, to not pretend and not make promises that we can't keep. To be real with them and say, we don't know when it's going to end, the fact of us having to stay home, but we'll get through this and we'll get through it together. Because we're a family who can do things together.
I like how you say don't jump in, because so often as parents you want to, control's the wrong word, but almost control the narrative. Like when things are going on, you want to say, hey, this is what's happening, and be able to filter it. But I like how you said I don't know if you worded this right way, but it is uncertain. And so acknowledging where we're at and acknowledging, we're unsure of what it's going to look like, but then still declaring, no, it's going to be okay. And that's when we come in with the truth of God. Like, no, his eyes are on you. He's got this. His promises are still true. Like what he's promised us, he's going to be faithful to fulfill that. His words are still right. Like it's still, you can have the uncertainty and the promise.
Yeah, that's right.
What about, like, for example, we've had a rough time in Australia. We've had fires and floods and now this. And for the fires, for example, I was talking to my kids about that because we weren't directly impacted. There was smoke, but we weren't impacted. I was wanting them to be aware of how other people were coping and how it was influencing them. So is it appropriate to talk about those things? Hey, some people might be losing their jobs. Some people might be feeling it this way. Is it appropriate to bring them in on those conversations? Or
yeah, I think so. Again, age appropriate, but obviously to let them know that this is impacting families in different ways. And again, to bring the reassurance that even though it's affecting people and some people have lost their jobs, but the government is stepping in and helping people out. And just to make general statements like that give them that reassurance so that it doesn't go to catastrophe. It's not the end of the world. It's really important. So in saying that, I want to come back to the timing of these conversations. We need to have these conversations with our children at a time when we are able to be calm and have that confidence within ourselves when we're speaking to them. So don't have the conversation. In fact, set a boundary if the conversation is somehow opened up and you're feeling anxious. Let them know this is a really important conversation, but I want to be my best self when we have this conversation. So I just need some time out, and we'll come back to it and set a time and come back to it when you're able to give your best, when you've regulated your own emotion around it.
I think it's helpful also when we talk about these unknown things and the hardships of what people are going through to also put it in context of God. That, yes, like this is the reality and this is exactly what people are going through, and we can do what we can do to help, but this is who our God is. And we can encourage them that when you pray, it's powerful. We can take communion together because that's not just an act, but it's powerful. We can declare the finished work of the cross over it. So putting, like, not hiding from it, but also just let's put it in context of who God is, because
that's right.
He's still on the throne.
Yes, absolutely. And encourage them with some of the familiar songs that they sing. I don't know whether you, which ones you use in kids' church, because I haven't had the privilege of being to kids' church, not for a long time.
Welcome, you're welcome.
Yeah, I'd like to come sometime. But I was just listening to a video from Colin Buchanan the other day, and he was doing, you know, my God is so big, so strong and so mighty, and that's one that goes back to when my kids were little. But just simple songs like that reinforce at the child's own level who our God is. It's so important that they have that place of stability, of assurance around that. Just an example comes to mind. You know that we do a lot of what we call God space in the prayer ministry, and I think you've stepped into it maybe a little bit in kids' church, but sometimes just to get them to do a picture of who God is for us when he's big and he's strong and he's mighty. Use some of the metaphors that are in the Bible. God is like a rock. And when God's like a rock, what's that like for me when I can stand on that rock that doesn't move? And I think the value in making pictures around that helps it to move from just what we know into a more experiential thing. And even what we do in prayer ministry, and you could do this in a real fun way with kids, is to get them to stand on their picture. Now, how do you feel when you're standing on that rock and when God is strong and stable like that? And so they'll begin to experience that what it feels like when we've got God there as that solid foundation. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's giving them that activation of but no, I can stand on this and I can actually live from it. It's not just and it doesn't have to be when I'm older. I still, as an adult, I still remember the song VeggieTales, God is bigger than the boogeyman. And at night, if I hear a song, noise, that song pops in my head. But it's a silly song, but it's true. It's true. And it's what spoke to me. And it's carried me through. That God is bigger than the boogeyman. So what about our children? What if they are actually extremely anxious or extremely worried? It's not just in the conversation, but they're like within themselves. They're just presenting the way. How can we support?
Yeah, that's a great question, Caitlin. And just before I address that, I just want to point out that sometimes their anxiety will come out in ways that we might not recognise as anxiety. So it could be in acting out, in being more intolerant, just, you know, having a really short fuse, all that sort of thing. It can actually come back to the anxiety within. And sometimes even a child who is not showing any visible reaction, it can be down under the surface. So just to be aware of that. But in getting back to your question, when a child is feeling really anxious, again, they need to have that safe presence with you, and they need to be able to express that. So they need a safe place to say, I'm really frightened. And I grew up that if I said something like that, sometimes the response would be, oh, don't be silly. I think most parents these days know that that's not the response to give. But to enter
doesn't mean
that,
you don't always get it right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. If any of my kids are watching, they know that I didn't get it right all the time. So yeah, to be able to enter into that with them and let them know I understand, and it is a bit scary. And again, to enter into that with them, sit with them in that for long enough that they know that you've understood, that you've really understood what's happening for them. But then to bring, remember I said add in, so bring in the reassurance, the encouragement, but we're here for you, and you know, it's the presence, it's the arm around, the close connection. We're here for you, and we are going to get through this together. Explore with them what it is that they're actually frightened about. Open up the conversation. Let them tell you, because you might be quite surprised at what is actually scaring them. And, you know, kids can interpret the world from their own centricity. And so, you know, it could be that they're afraid that they're going to get the virus, or that, you know, something's going to happen to Nanny or Poppy, or, you know, it could be a whole range of things, or it might be something totally unrelated to the virus. So, you know, explore with them, let them talk about it. One of the things that I would encourage, and particularly at this time, but as a regular routine, as much as possible, have a regular time in the day with your child when just you and the child, and they know that they've got that time where they've got mum or dad's 100% attention, and it's a time for talking about anything that's going on for them, and have it as a regular routine part of the day, so that if things come up during the day and you know, it just isn't able to be attended to, they know that they've always got that time where they can come and have that sort of conversation. But again, the reassurance and your calm presence is what they need most of all.
I like how you said being intentional about giving them your one-on-one time, because it might sound like a given or common sense, but in the chaos of getting up and trying to get everyone started, and you working and helping them and babies and it all, you can get to the end of the day and you had the best of intentions, but that type of day doesn't allow really fun. But if you have the goal at least one point in the day, I will connect with each one. And it sounds like, obviously, but in your day, sometimes it doesn't present itself as easily as what you would like. So it's really intentional.
And we need to come back again to those numbers that you were talking about. And if one day you miss out, that's okay. You know, let's bring it back to being realistic again, and there'll be another time that you can grab with that child. What
about for kids at the moment? They would feel like a lot has been taken away. They more than likely aren't going to school. All of the sporting activities have ended, play dates, all of their hobbies, all of a sudden just gone, even the simple thing of going to the park to play. So what are some ways that we can still feel like, no, you're empowered in this, you're not just, things aren't just taken away from you, like we can still have fun, and you can still have it, like, I don't know, who you are can be part of the day, and you can choose as well what it looks like. Oh, no, you're fine. Sam's calling you now.
So, sorry, can you remind me of what that just?
Okay. So for kids that are feeling like they've just had everything taken away, they could feel really like disempowered in that. So how can we empower them in this situation that, no, they can still live and continue on and enjoy?
It's a really good question, because it brings me to two things that I picked up from somebody that I was reading, and her name's Ruth Haley Barton, and she talks about making space for grief and gratitude. And as you said, there's a lot that kids are missing out on right now, and there is grief. It's very real grief, because there's loss. And so to make space for that, to acknowledge it's hard, and we feel sad because we can't go and play with our friends. We can't do the things we normally do. But then there's also the gratitude there's the things that we do have, and we're seeing a lot more of mum and dad. For some kids, that's great. They're very thankful for that. And there'll be moments around that as well. But there are things to be grateful for. So many of us have talked about being grateful for the technology that we've got, that we can still be connected in this time. The fact that we can still get out, we can ride our bikes, we can go for walks, that sort of thing, to be grateful for. So one of the practices that Ruth talked about was just at a mealtime, or a time that works for you, to sit down together as a family, and what's one thing that you're thankful for today? And it doesn't have to be a big protracted time. It's just one thing you're thankful for, one thing that's made you sad today, and one thing that you're afraid about. And just to open that space and to acknowledge that there are things that we're thankful for, and that's really important, but there's also things that we're sad about, and there's things that are making us afraid, and to be real together as a family. And then in the midst of that, to add in again the reassurance, but we're together and we're going to get through this together, and to acknowledge we've got God here in our midst too. God is with us, and he's looking after us as a family. And to be intentional around acknowledging his presence with us.
Yeah, I like that, because it gives us permission to actually look for the good, because obviously life is different, but I also have enjoyed some of, I guess, the gains, like the extra family time, getting outside every day, and it almost feels a bit guilty to find something that I've gained in this. But if God is there, like, God is good, we can't separate God from good. Like, he is good, and he has good things for us even in the midst of a storm, and we can enjoy that. Like, we can enjoy him and the things that he brings into our life, like family time. But you don't have to feel guilty about that, which for me is encouraging. What about if, oh no, do you want to say something?
No.
What about if we as parents, we are feeling anxious or worried, and like for real circumstance, maybe we've lost a job or anything like that, loss of income, and it's not just a worry that we can just switch off, because that's a very real need.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how can we manage that and also not let that affect the atmosphere?
Yeah. Again, another great question, because that's the reality of life right now.
Yeah.
And I think what I would say, first of all, is to recognise that we're not alone. I think many of us are realising right now the importance of community and of the communities that we're a part of, and to be able to reach out to others, to reach out and if we're feeling at a loss, to draw our strength from others, to draw our hope, our sense of calm, our need for reassurance from those around us in our community. And essentially as well, for most of us who have that connection with God, to go to God and to know that he's there for us in whatever we're facing, and he's able to look after us. And so in that space to allow our anxiety and our distress to calm, so that we can then get into that place of peace and knowing deep within ourselves that we are going to be okay, that we will get through this. And something we were talking about earlier, Caitlin, was that most of us have been through hard things before. We haven't been through this before, but we've been through hard things. And to know we got through that.
Yeah.
We will get through this. Yeah. And I love that in this particular thing that we're going through right now, that we're much more aware of community around us. And so it's not me having to do it on my own, having to hunker down and just do my best, but I'm part of a community, and we can lend our strength to each other. And I think that's, you were talking about the good things that are coming out of this, and I think that's one of the really good things.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is coming out of this.
Yeah, God is obviously not the author of this. This virus was not caused by him at all.
No.
But he's not surprised by it. And you've seen a real shift. People have been speaking into family, speaking into community, and like God to give us what we need before we need it.
Yeah.
We might not have it perfected, but the connections are there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I love that, we are all in this across the whole world. Like, it's a global issue that we are all facing. And like I told you before, I listened to a podcast and they were just saying, when in our own personal history have we lived through a time where we can all say, we're all experiencing this together. And so there is great compassion and great empathy out there, and we can reach out. We can ask, trusted people that we would normally go to for help. And it's really not encouraging, freeing to be able to say, you know what, I don't know, or I'm struggling. It's really freeing to just admit, I'm struggling here, or I don't know what to do here.
Yeah.
Because in healthy community, that's, like you said, people lend their strength.
Yeah, that's right. And it is those safe people. It's the people that we trust, that we can reach out to and know will not judge us, but will lovingly accept and encourage us right where we're at. And maybe not even need to give us advice, but just to be present with us in what we're experiencing. And as you say, because we're all going through it, we are far more able to be present with each other and know that we will get through this together.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about the new exciting thing of home learning?
Yes.
Are all of a sudden thrown into it without any warning or preparation. Mums and dads are working and teaching, and just that alone can cause a whole lot of stress. So what can you say to speak into that area? Because I'm ready to receive it.
I want to bring some perspective here. My heart goes out to all the mums and dads who are doing the homeschooling at the moment. It's a huge ask, especially if you're holding down a job as well, to be able to manage all of that. And I want to come back to where I started, that at the end of the day, what your children need most is you. And if they don't get some of the work done, don't get an assignment done, it is not the end of the world. Really need to gain perspective there and to come back to the place where the relationship with your child is the most important thing. And if this homeschooling, home learning, whatever you want to call it, is creating more stress than it's worth, then we need to back off and take a breath and look at, okay, what's really important here? What do I need to do? And when we were talking earlier, you mentioned the possibility of disconnecting with one of the teachers. That's a really helpful thing to do. Teachers are a lot more accessible right now.
They are, and I have found I got a lot of the emails and the teaching content and found it overwhelming, and we're trying to cram it in, and it's just not doable. It's not possible. But then actually just having the teachers call and check in and just having that conversation, they're like, yeah, of course not. Of course you can't do it. It's like, they're not putting the pressure on us. They're just providing us with the things that we could use. And like I even said with you, we actually did have a bit of a mishap. In one area of home learning with one child, it didn't go too well and it ended up into a big mess. And so when I spoke to the teacher straight away, she was like, oh, don't even worry about that, and thought of all these other ways that we could approach it. And it was just like, oh, of course, like I am putting this unnecessary pressure on myself, but no one else is. And ask them.
Which is wonderful that you were able to reach out and ask, and it just brought all the stress down. And I could even see the change in you as you described that. It was just huge relief. And that's what we need to do. We need to give ourselves permission not to have to do it all, because in the classroom, not everybody finishes every task, and teachers adjust the tasks according to the child's needs and the child's capacity, and I'm sure teachers are sending out a lot of material so that there are options for children, and those who do want to sit there and work all day, it's there for them, but not everybody has to do it. So let's get some perspective here, and Another a really helpful article I was reading was from somebody who has been a teacher as well as a homeschool mum. And she was saying what we're doing right now is not actually homeschooling, it's crisis schooling. And I mean, I'm not worried about what we call it, but it's how we see it, that it is a crisis situation, and we've been dropped into this all of a sudden. And so it's crisis teaching and it can be traumatic, and to recognize that and to lift the pressure off. There's lots of different ways of learning, and it's not just completing set work. Your children will be learning lots all day. Yeah.
And probably, I'm sure some will stick, but they're not going to look back at this time remembering what they learned at home. They're going to remember the fun things that they did with mum and dad that didn't normally get to do, or they'll remember the atmosphere. They'll remember how they felt, not necessarily what we learned.
Yeah.
And one thing that's encouraging to me is that all of the children are doing this. So my daughters are not disadvantaged by me teaching them, and everyone else is going to get back at school and be miles ahead. They're all experiencing it, and they're all going to be okay. And it's not, their education isn't now derailed.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
They will be fine.
That's a great perspective, Caitlin. Keep that one. Yeah.
I'll keep going with that.
Really
I think
important.
that's the theme for today. They are okay. We will be okay. We're all going to be okay.
That's right.
Just jumping in for older children.
Yeah.
So I have little Liz, which I'm really thankful, because I would not want to be teaching and supporting HSE students right now. I can imagine that the pressure for them would be different. Their learning can't be as relaxed as what a 5-year-old's would be. And also teenagers' social life is everything, which is rightfully so. It's a really beautiful season of life, but they would be feeling, I'm assuming, pretty isolated, pretty frustrated, and parents really would be feeling the pressure in that situation. How can you do anything to speak into teenagers at the moment, parenting them?
Yeah, that's a challenge at any time, but particularly right now.
Yeah.
So all grace to those parents of teenagers. Some advice that I was given, or that we were given when our eldest was a young teenager, was, Jan, the relationship is the most important thing. Your relationship with your daughter is key, and guard that beyond all. And I have been so thankful for that advice again and again and again. And I think it's great advice to take hold of right now, that my relationship with my teenager, with my child, is the thing that is most important at this time.
Yeah.
So build on the relationship that you've already got, and if that relationship is strained, here's perhaps an opportunity to do some repair, to come in and just be beside your child rather than over your child. So what I would encourage is keep that priority of the relationship centre front, and to be working on that, to sit down with your teenager and talk about what's going on for you, how's this impacting you, and again, listen. Don't feel like you've got to jump in with this and that and correction, but listen, find out what's going on for them, and acknowledge how hard it is that they're not able to be out with their friends, and talk to them about that. So how are they compensating for that, and recognise that they do need extra time connecting through social media or whatever, but talk with them about the other things that are needed, because let them know you don't want them to get behind in their schoolwork. You want them to keep up with it, but you want to partner with them rather than, again, come over the top of them. So how can we solve this together? I was listening to something earlier today that talked about kids are great problem solvers. They really do know how to solve problems. And so draw that out of them. You know, we've got some challenges here in front of us. How are we going to address this? And so as a partnership rather than as a parent telling them what to do. Now, obviously there will be times when you've got to draw the line. That's okay. I'm not saying don't do that, but just keep in mind the priority of the relationship.
Yeah.
And again, try and take the pressure off. You know, HSC students have enough pressure without all of this going on as well. Do whatever you can as a parent to take the pressure off and to let them know it's not the end of the world. It's not the be all and end all. But that you're on their side, you want to work with them and help them get through this tough.
I was speaking to one mum of a teenager, and they were trying to do one lesson and they were struggling, and then they were getting frustrated with what they had to do, and then tension was building. And so the teenager just looked at the mum and said, "Oh, can we just go work out?" And she called it. She's like, "Yep, let's go work out." And I think that's so wise and so gracious, just to recognize, hey, that child is communicating, you know what, I've reached my capacity, and just giving them that exit, giving them that out. And it was beautiful because the teenager said, "Can we work out?" Like they went and released the tension together. I think that's really beautiful. Like, listen to what they're saying. Like sometimes, sure, you might have to draw a hard line, but they're also going to be communicating their needs.
Really and I love that example because a great response from the parent, but also the parent recognised the wisdom in the child. That is actually what was needed in that moment, not to keep struggling away with the problem, but to remove themselves from it, to expend some energy and come back to it another time. And probably it won't be such an issue when they come back to it. They'll come back to it fresh. So brilliant response from both the child and the parent.
Absolutely. So I think we're running out of time, but I just wanted to cover one more thing that we were talking about before, which I think is important. We've been talking about the learning and the anxiety and worry, all of the things, but it's also a really beautiful time where we can allow creativity in our homes, allow children that space to just create, to be themselves, to allow fun in our home, maybe set some new healthier routines, establish some new traditions, whatever. Did you want to speak into anything like that? Or
I'd love to, because I think there's a lot of opportunity here if we look for it. As you say, opportunity to establish some new family traditions, and things that the kids will look back on this time. Oh yeah, that's when we started playing games together, or that's when we really enjoyed sitting down and watching a movie together, or that's when we as a family really got involved in helping other people together. And that reminded me actually of something again that we talked about earlier. And I just want to go back for a moment to children feeling anxious, that when they've got all of that anxious energy, it's really important to find something to do with that anxious energy, but not just any old thing, but something. The anxiety is around feeling powerless. So if they can be given things to do, encouraged to do things that are actually relevant to the situation. So simple things like, what we can do is be washing our hands and coughing into our elbow, doing all of those things, but also joining as a family, reaching out to others. What can we do? Can we write a note and send it, pop it in somebody's letterbox? Caitlin, I heard a great story of something that your family did. Would you like to share that?
Sure. We had of course, at our house, we had a bag of Easter eggs, and the shocker is that we chose not to eat them ourselves, but we drove to the cousin's house, sprinkled it on their front lawn, printed off a picture, family photo of us and the dog, saying we love you, miss you, drove away and said, surprise, there's an Easter egg hunt. But we did that because it was silly, it was fun, the kids are missing their cousin, so it was really good for our kids to say that they can still, pursue that relationship. There is still a way to have that relationship with their cousins. Also, cousins or teenagers, just to let them know, hey, we really feel your absence.
Yeah.
And we genuinely miss you. So that was just fun.
Yeah. And so important to be doing fun things at this time.
Yeah.
Because it's a huge release for people just to be having fun. And play. Play is so essential. Play is a safe place for children. It protects them from everything that's going on around them. So to recognise the importance of play and playing together as a family, finding fun things to do. I don't know whether it's okay to mention this about a certain senior pastor and his family who got into an amazing dance routine.
They did. They're now TikTokers.
Yeah. So that was just a great thing of seeing a family having fun together. And so finding all sorts of creative ways that we can have fun. And here's another way of just being collaborative, sharing our ideas and knowing that what works for one family might not work for another family, but they can find something that works for them. So it's that whole collaborative thing. Again, we're back to community, I think, Caitlin.
Yes, absolutely. Look at other families, get inspired, but don't feel like you have to do that. Like I said, I saw some funny memes of there is no winner for the best quarantiner. So what works for them might not work for you, but there is fun to be had in your family. And it's not all bad. Being together, it can be really beautiful. And I just want to encourage you that I was speaking to one awesome mum who homeschools, and she was saying, we don't have good days and bad days. We have good moments and bad moments, and you'll have a day full of them, or you might even have a day full of bad moments. But those points of fun can just be reset buttons. Just call it, okay, today's kind of been a write-up, let's start again, and do a bit of a reset and just introduce a little bit of silly. Silly is good.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And we did talk about the importance of the repair as well. When something does go wrong and it just all gets too much for us and we blow our top or do something that we regret, just because we're human. And to recognise that does happen. We are human, and to give ourselves permission to be human, but then to know that the repair, the way that we come back and reconnect is actually more healing than perhaps the damage that may have happened when we raised our voice or did whatever we did. So to come back to our children and say, I'm really sorry that I did that. It's hard right now and it all got too much for me, but I'm okay now. I'm okay again now. And let's talk about how that was for you. What happened for you? How did you feel when I was like that? And to be able to do that repair in a really healthy way, it's going to strengthen the bonds, the connections in the family. So we've got amazing opportunities in this time. And we need to be looking for those opportunities and really making the most of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we're out of time if you're good. Yeah. We'll just let you know that if you are needing any extra support or if you are needing any prayer, you can email prayer@dayspring.com.au. They will pray for you and minister to you. And if there's any area where you're needing actual practical help, they'll be able to point you to the right direction. They'll be able to point you to our pastoral team. We'd love to serve you. We'd love to lend our strength to you. And I think, Jen, you might also have a few resources that you might want to share. Is that right?
Yeah, I do. So I've mentioned Karen Young, Hey Sigmund. So it's just HEYSIGMUND. A wonderful resource. Brilliant one to get. That's probably the best one that I would encourage you to go to. I went to a course with Karen a couple of weeks ago. A lot of real wisdom around anxiety and children. So a worthwhile resource. Yeah.
Fabulous. All right, well, if you have stuck with us to the very end, thank you very much. We hope you have been encouraged and strengthened. We are praying health over you and peace over your homes. And we are confident that we will be okay, that God has got this, and you're not alone. So thank you very, very much, Jan. It's been a privilege.
Thank you, Caitlin.
And we'll see you later. Bye. Don't forget to tune in to Dayspring Kids. Oh, and Dayspring Church. I meant to say church, but I plugged kids. It's natural. See you later. Bye.